Again, highly simplified here, under certain conditions, these coagulate into matter. Those electromagnetic units of high enough intensity automatically activate the subordinate coordinate points of which I have spoken. They are, therefore, accelerated and propelled into matter far more quickly, in your terms, than units of lesser intensity. Molecules would appear as large as planets to these units. Atoms and molecules and planets and these electromagnetic energy units are simply different manifestations of the same principles that bring the units themselves into being. It is only your relative position, your focus within an apparent space and time, that makes this seem so unlikely. Each thought or emotion, therefore, exists as an electromagnetic energy unit, or as a combination of these under certain conditions, and often, with the help of coordinate points, they emerge into the building blocks of physical matter. This emergence into matter occurs as a neutral result regardless of the nature of any given thought or emotion. Mental images accompanied by strong emotion are blueprints, therefore, upon which a corresponding physical object or condition or event will in your terms appear. The intensity of a feeling or thought or mental image is therefore the important element in determining its subsequent physical materialization. The intensity is the core about which the electromagnetic energy units form. In your terms, the more intense the core, the sooner the physical materialization. This would appear whether the mental image was a fearful one or a joyful one. Now there is a very important problem here. If your turn of mind is highly intense, and you think in vivid mental emotional images, these will be swiftly formed into physical events. If you are also of a highly pessimistic nature, given to thoughts and feelings of potential disaster, then these thoughts will be quite faithfully reproduced in experience. The more intense your imagination and inner experience, therefore, the more important it is that you realize the methods by which this inner experience becomes physically real. Your thoughts and emotions begin their journey into physical actualization at the moment of conception. If you happen to live in an area where the coordinate environment is strong, one of those areas I have spoken of as unusually conductive, then it will seem that you are deluged with illnesses or disasters, if these are the nature of your thoughts, because all thought is so fertile in this environment. If, on the other hand, your feelings and subjective experience are fairly well balanced, fairly optimistic, and creative in a constructive manner, then it will seem to you that you have been blessed with unusual luck, for your pleasant suppositions will come to pass so quickly. Briefly, in your own county, the West Coast, I think that's country, briefly in your own country, the West Coast, portions of the East Coast, Utah, the Great Lakes, the Chicago area, the Minneapolis area, and some other southwestern areas are in those neighborhoods of excellent coordinate activity for the reasons given. Materialization will quickly appear, and potentials therefore for both constructive and destructive elements are high. These coordinate points themselves activate the behavior of atoms and molecules as, say for example, the sun aids the growth of plants. The coordinates activate the generating behavior of atoms and molecules and greatly encourage their cooperative abilities, their tendency to swarm, so to speak, into organizations and structural groupings. The coordinate points magnify or intensify the behavior, the latent spontaneity inherent within the properties of physical matter. They act as psychic generators, propelling what is not yet physical into physical form. Now, this is not to be a technical book, so this is not the time nor place to discuss thoroughly the action, behavior, or effects of these coordinate points, nor of the electromagnetic energy units, those natural emanations of consciousness of which I spoke. I want it known, however, that thoughts and emotions are formed into physical matter by very definite methods and through laws quite valid, though they may be presently unknown. In other portions of the Seth material, these processes will be made very clear for those of you who desire to pursue the question further, or those who may be interested from a scientific point of view. Here we are discussing such issues only because they touch upon the multi-dimensional aspects of personality. They allow you to materialize certain subjective experiences into three-dimensional reality. Before I leave the subject, however, let me remind you that these emanations in varying degrees rise from all consciousness, not simply your own. This includes cellular consciousness as well, so that an invisible network of electromagnetic units pervades your entire atmosphere, and upon this webwork and from it, the particles of physical matter are then formed. A whole book could easily be written upon this subject. Information regarding the locations of main and absolute coordinate points could be highly advantageous, for example. You pride yourselves on your technology and the production of durable goods, buildings, and roads, yet many of these are insignificant when compared to other structures within the past. A true understanding of the way in which an idea becomes physical matter would result in a complete revamping of your so-called modern technology, and in buildings, roads, and other structures that would far outlast those you now have. While the psychic reality behind physical matter is ignored, then you cannot use those methods effectively that do exist, nor can you take advantage of them. You cannot understand the psychic reality that is the true impetus for your physical existence, unless you first realize your own psychic reality and independence from physical laws. My first purpose, therefore, is to make you aware of the inner identity of which you are part, and to clear away some of the intellectual and superstitious debris that prevents you from recognizing your own potentials and freedom. Then perhaps you can begin to learn the many ways in which that freedom can be used. Now I'm beginning the next chapter. Chapter 6, The Soul and the Nature of its Perception. With the little background given so far, we can at least begin to discuss the subject of this book, the eternal validity of the soul. Even when we are exploring other issues, we will be trying to illustrate the multidimensional aspect of this inner self. There are many misconceptions connected with it, and first of all, we shall try to dismiss these. First of all, a soul is not something that you have. It is what you are. I usually use the term entity in preference to the term soul, simply because those particular misconceptions are not so connected with the word entity, and its connotations are less religious in an organizational sense. The trouble is that you frequently consider the soul or entity as a finished, static thing that belongs to you but is not you. The soul or entity, in other words, your most intimate, powerful inner identity, is and must be forever changing. It is not, therefore, something like a cherished heirloom. It is alive, responsive, curious. It forms the flesh and the world that you know, and it is in a state of becoming. Now, in the three-dimensional reality in which your ego has its main focus, becoming presupposes arrival, or a destination, an ending to that which has been in a state of becoming. But the soul or entity has its existence basically in other dimensions, and in these, fulfillment is not dependent upon arrivals at any point, spiritual or otherwise. The soul or entity is always in a state of flux or learning, and of developments that have to do with subjective experience rather than with time or space. This is not nearly as